Hello, welcome back. You listen to the Omi Show. I am Omi Bell. It is Sunday, and you know we got the best guest on the planet for you. Today, I'm going to be talking to Latanya Mapp Frett. She is the president and CEO of Global Fund for Women and serves on the board of directors for Global Fund for Women and Global Fund for Women UK. So I'm excited because I want to hear all about the Global Fund for Women, but more importantly, she has a book out. It dropped on March 8th, and it's called The Everyday Feminist. So we're going to talk about what that means, womanist, feminist, why she chose this, where she's going, what she's doing. You got to stay and hear everything that this woman is bringing. Welcome to the show, Latanya Mapp Frett. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Ami. Thank you so much for the invitation. I feel like getting invited here means I'm part of the cool girl club now. So.
Hey, you are now Omi Homie. So welcome to the Omi Homies batch. All right. Okay, so you could be doing anything in the world. Okay. You could be climbing mountains. You could be surveying lands. You could be saving wildlife. Okay. You could be doing anything you want to do. Why did you choose to write this book, The Everyday Feminist? Why be the president and CEO of the Global Fund for Women?
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, thank you for the question, first of all. We probably don't think about, our origin story that much. And in the book, I write a lot of stories, and they're compiled together and they're focused on, particular women in particular places. But when you go back, I mean, I'm from West Philly. So, I mean, in most respects, I grew up probably like most, Black inner city girls on the East Coast. But the realization is, and in hindsight, we live in a very unequal country, and so living in an urban setting with parents, I lived in an abusive home. But one thing my mother and father did instill in us very early is this sort of champion for learning, champion for equality and for helping people. And so I always had that, thinking in me. And because my brother, went through the juvenile justice system, he was in and out of jail when we were little. I always thought about how I could make it more fair for him personally. It was just what I wanted to do. And so my heroes were like Thurgood Marshall and Harriet Tubman, so that was kind of where my head was at that time. I grew up, my parents were members of the Nation of Islam. So we grew up in that community, which is, for people that know that community, is a very close knit community. They hold you. And so I feel like unlike some other people, even in my family or in my community, that I really got a good understanding of Black history, Black culture, and what it means to be a Black woman, a Black queen early. And I think that all of that has come back. I mean, by the time I got to college, I was out there insisting that the university divest from South Africa. Apartheid to me was just one step away from the nonsense that we experience in this country all the time, but especially our legacy around being enslaved people in this country. I went on to law school, and while I was there, I did 2 programs overseas. One was in Kenya to study the international public law system, so the UN, the bank, WHO, and all these other sort of, in some ways, really colonial structures that were set up. And then I went to Peace Corps, where I worked on child protection and women's rights. And I think that was sort of the trigger where I really started to focus. I had this amazing opportunity to go to the Women's Conference in Beijing in 1995, and the focus was on gender equality. And I was really struck by how different we were, like all the different cultures and stuff there. But we had this one rallying call, right? That women's rights were human rights. And it really affected me to this day, because even though I grew up with so many differences, especially feeling a little bit different, both from my community, because I was in the nation, but also just being Black in this country, you get treated as different. And so that really, to me, was like, all these people are so different cultures, different languages, but yet they can come together around one thing. And so that's kind of what affected me and the reason I do what I do today.
I love that. In West Philadelphia, born and raised. So I had to go there. I had to do it. I couldn't resist. So one of the things that I think is that I'm fascinated by is like your level of diligence. Like I really appreciate when I listen to you say like, hey, I went here, I learned new information, I decided this. That is something that is so interesting for listeners to hear and people to be aware of, is that you learn information, you're a change maker at heart. You're gonna make a move on it. Like no matter how small, no matter how big the move is, you just can't help yourself because you're like, this is what I'm born and bred to do.
Very
Question
true.
for you around the word feminist. So as you had traveled across the world and you heard these different like women's economic empowerment, which is something that's core to me and my efforts. And it's like the focus on women,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not the focus when you go global, not so much the focus on race,
Mm-hmm.
but the focus on women. What are your thoughts though about like feminist versus womanist and how those things play out in our lives as Black women and your work just across working with women across the globe?
So, I mean, great question. I like them both. I mean, part of what I'm trying to say in the everyday feminist is like, let's not get caught up in language, because even, and I say this all the time, even the word feminist, like for my grandmother, when I was growing up, she was like, she is no feminist. That's white, rich women on the other side of town that have time to be sitting up worried about, their gender. But yet the qualities that I bring out in the book of an everyday feminist are the qualities around, definitely the ones that my grandmother, brung up, sort of how they show up in the community, how they show out when things are wrong, how they embrace and constantly work for equality and equity in their communities, in their countries. And so those characteristics are what important to me. And I want to dispel this myth that we need to call ourselves a certain thing to be that. These are just everyday women that are always out there, that they're always feeling like, they're the heads of the PTA, they're nursing the sick and the old. These are women doing things that we just take for granted. I mean, and I don't mean just in this country, I mean around the world. I've lived in 15 different countries and I have done
Oh my
work in
goodness.
52. So I am not, talking about just one thing that I, am experiencing here in the US, but I'm talking about how we overlook and underappreciate women for things that we consider to just be women's work, and it's like we know it when it comes to the mama effect, right? But I'm talking about things that move past their own household, but the way they show up in the community is just taken for granted, and that we don't resource them to keep moving and to keep these struggles, past just a moment, past a march. And they have the capacity and ability and they're doing it. We just, for some reason, assume they should do it without anything, without any kind of money. But you see it even in the corporate world, right? We still are, paid far less. I mean, Black women are still at the bottom of the totem pole, which I think we're still at maybe about 67 cents for every dollar or something close to that. That a white male makes. And so we just see this sort of, this scenario, that, it has to be one thing or the other. So whether it's feminist or womanist, it's like, let's just get the work done and let's support the people that's doing it. I love, terms, if they mean something to you, if you like feminist, then use it. If you prefer womanist, then use that. But what I'm really trying to get at is, let's take care of these women. Let's make sure that they can do the work that they've been called to do and that they're doing every day.
Yeah, I love that. I think the only thing that gets me kind of stuck about it, and I'll be honest, just being
Mm-hmm.
fully transparent,
Mm-hmm.
is when we're trying to do it collectively and then what the goals are from the collective focus of doing the work. So,
Mm-hmm.
like right now, like you worked in multiple different countries, of course. And so like we're at Black Core Ventures looking at doing work in the UK. Well, what we're hearing from the diaspora, right, in the UK is yes, this is focused on women, but they're not meaning us.
Mm.
Right, like they're saying, and I think that's historically the divide that's happened in the U.S. as well, which is they're saying women, but they're not meaning us, right? Like
Mm.
the
Mm.
woman's issue of this woman, there is a commonality somewhere, but the
Mm.
level of fight that we going after, I got a whole different fight. Well, they have a whole different fight, and but we have commonalities in our fight, but there's still these different fights that we somehow can't bridge or haven't been able to really bridge, and it's keeping us divided. Like how would how should an everyday feminist be viewing themselves in alignment with the work they want to see in the world?
So, I mean, it's a great question, and I feel like our opposition thrives when we focus on our differences instead of our commonalities, right? And so I think we have to practice that muscle, because it is going to be different literally in every community, not just in every country, right? It is the things that we care about. I mean, it was the whole, and I talk, we get some wisdom from Loretta Ross in the book too, about how all of this is like, when we were talking about sort of the reproductive rights, and how they kind of had to move into reproductive justice because the communities were talking about different things. We weren't just talking about the right not to have children. We were talking about the right to have children and the right to protect our children, right? So that was a much larger context for our struggle and for our movements than it was in the other, and I would say the majority or the popular movement around reproductive rights and abortion. So I think that's kind of what, for me, everyday feminists represent their communities in the struggles for justice and equality, right? And this transformational change that we're talking about, and the use of a voice that they have to talk about these issues from their personal experiences, I think is extremely important. And as long as we have a respect for that, and every woman that shows up in this book, where I'm talking about everyday feminists, has that characteristics where they're looking for the commonalities, where they're looking to collaborate, where they're looking for those areas, but not saying that they have to all be the same, because they don't have to be. In the way you in one community think about what's important doesn't have to be the same as the next community, but those struggles are in common. And the way I come at it, is like, we need to be resourcing, and that's what the Global Fund for Women does, put resources in the hands of community activists for gender justice. It's not that they have to do it a certain way. It's not that they have to agree on certain things, but we do see the value in social movements. And we do want people to have the opportunity to be in community as they're going through these struggles, as they're looking for resources, support, and networks. And that's kind of, I think that the beauty of everyday feminists, that they're relatable and they're imperfect. They're human. They're not like these once in a generation, lightning in a bottle, charismatic leaders. They're just ordinary women with this extraordinary passion and commitment. And we're saying, let's, work with them, whatever the issues are, whatever they think are important, whatever they're moving towards, is not something we need to debate. We just need to be there to support and hold them as they do that work.
I love that. And so now, living across 15 countries and working across 52, when you okay, listen,
Now
well
it's
traveled.
176. I just want to tell you, moving to Global Fund for Women, we support women in 176 countries. So it's just, as you start doing this work, it just starts ballooning, and the joy comes from being able to help more and more people. But I'm sorry, go ahead with your question. I just wanted to bring that out.
No, I love that. I love that. So your career is just one for the books. I mean, literally, like, it is just amazing to read about what you have accomplished, how you have moved around, right? Because I think, like, you're at the top, you're just moving around at the top. I'm like, yes, go girl, yes. And so I'm always curious about, after having so much experience around so many things, all still related to one sort of anchor of empowerment, activist, advocacy, that kind of thing. What would you say are your like top three things you? So I'm gonna separate them out. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
say top three things you've learned just about people.
Mm-hmm.
You've lived in these different places. If after you stay in a place of a certain time, you adapt to the culture more and more and more, and then you start staying across multiple places, and you're like, the adaptation becomes similar. It's
Yes.
like, I know, not okay. Look for the street we don't go down. Okay, okay. Look for the neighborhood we don't go to, side of
That's
town we don't go
right.
to at the dark.
Yep.
Look for what kind of food we eat and don't eat. What kind of food works for our system, but also works locally, right?
That's right.
Uh,
And
right,
ask,
and then
and ask the cabbie all those questions when you first get there, because the cabbies
there you go.
always know. That's right. Or now
There
Uber
you go.
drivers or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, they always know.
There you go. And then what's respectful, what's not respectful,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so I
exactly.
would say, like, in that like bundle of things, those are kind of like your basic norms from going from country to country.
Right.
But then there's like these magical people learnings that you
Yeah,
get,
yeah, yeah,
where you're like, oh my God, the way of life here is producing these kind of personalities, whether or not they're good, bad, right, wrong, and different,
yep.
but really anchored to those cultures. what are some? I'm just so and if you have a story, I would love a story. But what are some of the things you've seen, learned? Like, we if we could just peel open your imagination and like past experience and be like, wow, your eyes have seen so much. So I'm curious,
Yeah.
something to stand out to you.
Well, and let me just say, for those that can grab the book, there's a ton of those stories in there. But I'll mention, the Eduardo Galeano. He's the Uruguayan author, and he said in his book, many little people in little places doing little things can change the world, especially for those that are
Mm.
close to it. And so that is what I've learned, is that people are doing this work for social change everywhere I went, and they're doing it in amazing ways. I'm sorry, I heard a little echo, but they're doing it in amazing ways, and they're just humble people. And so when I was in Kenya, that was my first trip out of the country. I went through London and then went to Kenya. The person that I met that was incredibly inspiring to me was a woman who owned a hair salon. And I'm always, the people are always asking, so okay, so it wasn't that, because I did meet members of their parliaments. I had these
Mm.
opportunities to meet heads of agencies with the UN and so on, but it was innocent. That's her name. She was in a hair salon, but what she was doing was giving advice to people who came to not just get their hair done, but to just have a community. She fed people. She's from Rwanda, so she
Mm.
was trying to get people, and it was at the time of the close to the time of the Rwandan crisis there, the genocide. And she was receiving people from that country while she was in Nairobi. So her little salon where I was getting my hair braided became this place where you could really feel that she was, bringing the community together, getting resources for them, helping them so that they can make a new home after having leaving their home under, horrible conditions. And so I one of the greatest lessons I've learned is that you shouldn't probably lift your head up to find the most impactful people, but you probably should just look around you. And right there, you'll find them doing amazing things
Mm.
to open your eyes and see. And I'll say I'll add to that, the other thing that really, and this is probably came from my grandmother, but what I saw moving around the world is this idea of humility. My grandmother used to say, be careful what you do on your way up, because you got to meet those people on your way down. But that, I really felt like that. It's been like now 30 years doing this work. And I keep, running into
Wow.
people I just got a message this morning, like on a Facebook Messenger, from someone who used to take care of my daughter when I lived in Mali, who has now moved to Atlanta. And I'm just like, this is like almost 15 years ago that I knew her. And I am just, humbled again at one, that she even reached out to me, but the work she was doing in Mali for her people was so important. And now I get to see her again and see how she's evolved and what she's even doing in Atlanta. So this piece about humility and how you look up and down at people, how you value people because of the money they have or the awards they have. I think we got to check ourselves, because so much of what you can find in the beauty of people and the what they can
Mm.
produce is not based on those things.
Well, listen, I love that. I mean, wait a minute. So you have children too?
Mm-hmm.
So
I sure do,
like
girl.
I try not to even go there when it comes to women, because I feel like men don't get asked about their children, but women always get asked about their children. You know what I mean? And so,
Well, I brung them
one,
up, so it's fair game.
that's right. That's right. So I just wait for the woman to do it, because I'm like, I'm not gonna do that.
Yes.
I don't see a lot of panels where men are there like, hey, and so how do you do your work and manage your kids,
Right,
man?
right.
Never happens. Okay.
Never.
But when it comes to leaving the country though, and a lot of our listeners out there who are business owners, small business owners, women, these everyday feminists that you are writing about,
Mm,
um, are interested in about doing business across borders, are
yes.
interested in like what it means to leave the US. And I think sometimes in the US we have a sort of messaging of don't leave. Like, hey, don't
Mm,
leave, because over there they might get you.
yeah.
And like, and so I want to dig into that for just a bit, but we got to go to a quick break. Listen,
Okay.
y'all keep it right here. We're talking to Latanya Mapp Frett, the author of The Everyday Feminist. She's also the president and CEO of the Global Fund for Women. She is an amazing just leader in general, and we're hearing her stories. You want to keep it locked right here. We'll be right back after the Omi Show on Sirius XM channel 126. We'll be right back after this. And we're back. You listen to the Omi Show. I am Omi Bell. We are here with Latanya Mapp Frett. She's the CEO and president of the Global Fund for Women. She also is the author of an amazing book that's out right now. You can go get it, Amazon, wherever books are sold, wherever you buy your books from. Go and get The Everyday Feminist. And so when we left off from the last conversation, we were talking about she's traveled to, now she's working with over 100 countries, but lived in 15. With her work and just work over time. But also, we're talking about the everyday feminists and these women who she's writing about in communities all across the globe that are doing the Lord's work, as I call it. Okay, because that is literally what we're doing. What I'm doing as CEO of Black Girl Ventures, what you're doing as CEO of the Global Fund for Women, is doing the Lord's work, is what I say. And that is broad. I don't even mean that religious based. I mean that as like the higher powers that be, that we are all in work to create a better world.
Yes.
Whether, like you said, whether you're the president of the PTA, or whether you are, the soccer mom running to help all the women in your neighborhood get the kids to soccer, or whatever sport they're playing. Like, you're playing an integral part. And what I love about the everyday feminist is the opportunity to see yourself.
Yes.
Right? Like, sometimes you're like doing this work, you wondering like, does anybody know I'm over here? Yeah. Does anybody see me? And with this book, The Everyday Feminist, you're really saying yes. And there's people like you everywhere. And here's their story too. Here's your story inside of their story. Right? Here's how you can see yourself. So I love that. But speaking of all of this, right? You've been rocking and rolling. And so moving overseas, your first move, I'm curious about, because we have people who are listeners who want to go global, want to move outside of the country, and just a little hesitant because in the unknown.
Yes.
And you took your daughter with you too.
Yeah, I have two. I have an older son. He's 23, and my daughter is 17. But yes, they both grew up in what it's called the global South. So I was posted in Ethiopia when I had my son, and I was posted in Mali when I had my daughter in West Africa. And so it's for both of them, this idea of being a part of a broader world community is something I love. But they also moved every couple of years, every 2-3 years. So they also have that feeling of wanting to connect and be grounded. And, as a parent, you're always just like hoping you don't really, can I say fuck? But, so hoping you don't screw them up,
Yeah,
So it's like, you constantly, worried about, whether or not they're getting what they need as you move around the world. But I do, as they're older now, I do like they speak a couple languages. They have a very broad array of friends from around the world. I mean, Facebook, if for no other reason, it keeps people connected that wouldn't ordinarily be. So and I won't pretend that it's, easy to move around with kids and a mastiff, a 75-pound dog, but we did it. And I feel blessed for it. I feel like having those experiences with all the women that you'll read in the book, but also just the ability to be able to, humbly, I say, be a part of different communities was really, really special for me. And as I look back, as I sit in San Francisco, even, I feel like this is sometimes growing up from West Philly, this is even another part of the world, right? It's like being on the West Coast for all this time now has also been special. So I feel like, it's so important for us in our role as parents, as mothers, to take care and to make sure our children are okay. But then there's a piece of that is you got to let them go too. And you got to prepare them. Michelle Obama uses this thing in her book, her new book, about what does she call it? Work yourself out of a job, And so that's what we're doing with our children, making sure they're okay. and then giving them all that you can, all the experiences, advice, and holding that you can, and then you got to let them. Then you got to let them fly.
Yeah, no, that's real. And I agree. Like right now I'm looking into moving to LA and I am having all the concerns about what it means to move across just this country.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I have considered moving out of the country a couple times.
Hmm.
And been thinking about it deeply. Because I do think that one, well, it's interesting. I want my daughter to have that experience.
Hmm.
But there is something around like the empowerment, the economic empowerment globally that I am hugely interested in. And with what I've been able to do
Okay.
here at Black Girl Ventures, it's been very taking simple mechanisms and implanting them into building community for people to gather and just help each other. And that's really what
Well,
it's been
let's
about.
talk about that for a minute, Ami, because I sit on the Women's Council, I'm sorry, for the United States Export Import Bank. And part of what I'm really trying to also, this is like my side gig, I guess, is that I'm trying to
As if you need a side gig,
exist,
ma'am.
right? You know, but it was just too important to pass
Saving
up.
the
But
world and a side gig. Okay, go ahead.
and so because everything about social movement and change means that you need economic independence, and I think we all have established that any community, any race, culture of people, that's what you need, right? So this is an opportunity to really make sure that women who have started businesses in the U.S., products or services that want to move them, be in community, take advantage of and leverage networks in other parts of the world. If you want to move into even growing markets, that you do have a place. So this is a huge shout out for looking at the new programs at the XM bank, because I think there is support there. We are, and I say we, women, Black women, don't take advantage of a lot of these things because we don't know about them. So I'm just a plug to go and look at what they offer, what kind of credit, loans, and even sometimes grants that they can provide you, and probably more importantly, information about moving your business, not moving it from, but in addition to, and growing your business in other
Yeah.
parts of the world, right? Because it's something that we just haven't been exposed to that much. And there's women out here doing like amazing things with their businesses all over the US. And now I think get some resources to think about how you can now leverage that and move into particularly developing economies. But wherever you want in the world, there is help to do that. And it's, there's lots of funds that have been put out, there to do this work. And we have to now be there to take advantage of those, like our white male colleagues, honestly.
100%. So what we will do after this call is I feel like we need to have multiple meetings. We need to just have drinks. But I want to
Yes.
what's the name of the bank? Import Export
Yeah, the United States Export Import Bank. And it
United
gives
States
credits, it gives
Export
loans
Import
and
Bank.
grants to American businesses that are going overseas.
Now we just learned something that might be new for the entire audience that's listening, that the United States has a export import bank that is available for all our business owners out there who are thinking about doing business in other countries. I love this because I feel like this is one of those where's the door kind of things. It's like, I know I want to do it, but then people are like, where's the door? How do I get in? Right. And you kind of like
Right.
standing back, like feeling through the dark. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. What we should do too is I would love to figure out one ways I can have you speak or get people from the bank for us to connect with at BGV at Black Girl Ventures, so we can do some education around this. Because you're exactly right. People don't know what they don't know, and then when you don't know what you don't know, you also don't know what to Google.
That's right.
So
And just a
you just gave
little
us,
plug, a Black woman
yeah.
runs it. She was appointed by Biden to run. So I mean, that's neither here or there necessarily, but I do think she's doing an amazing job
No,
of,
that's here and there.
yeah. I mean, because she's appointing people like me to on shows like this, to make this a regular part of our vernacular. And this is like the everyday feminist, right? It's like trying to enrich our communities one little step at a time, one little drop at a time. So I'm super excited to be able to do more, to talk about that more when we have time. Okay.
100%. We'll make it happen. We will make sure my people call your people and we get it together, because this is where we have like huge opportunity to make impact. And I mean, like, the thing is like getting people educated, whether they move on it now or later or not. Like, but the point is you got to know that it exists for you. I
Yeah.
think like that work alone, like a lot of like, yes, we're centered on like actually deploying funds. Yes, we're
Yes.
centered on actually getting people together and building networks. But leveling up your info, it's like, when you, like you said, as you travel, you got more information. You're like, hey, I want to go do this. Hey,
Mm.
we don't have this at my school. We need to have this. Hey, we don't have this over here. We need to have this. When you equip, in my opinion, is I'm gonna say women. When you equip a woman with information and even like a remnant of where to go, oh, you better look out, because
Yeah.
she is going to make it happen.
Totally. And I used to think it, and now I know it, because I tell you, I've seen it too many times to think it's just a fluke, right, in this place or that place. And I've been doing a lot of thinking and traveling around climate justice, areas where women are like
Mm,
super impacted, but not part of that, conversation around emissions and stuff, things they don't even know about, like by 2050, we need to reduce our emissions. It's like they over there, the sea is rising in these small island states, and they're having to move inland and or to other islands or other mainlands. I mean, the crisis is serious, and we over here arguing about whether it
mm.
really exists, right? We just had a 50-degree day in February in Chicago, and anybody in Chicago will tell you that's just like that never happens. I mean, so we're living in a moment where this crisis is not even gender neutral. There are places around the world, and in the book I tell a story about Maria Miranda, who is from Honduras, and she's an Afro-Caribbean indigenous woman who has been fighting sort of the fruit, the basically the land barons who have stolen people's land and use it to grow fruit. She's asking the question like, why doesn't that belong to us? But now, because the climate crisis has gotten so bad, she's now have pivoted. And you know how agile we got to be with these issues. And she's pivoted
Mm.
into the climate conversation about, are we even going to have land for our children and our grandchildren, and what it means to respect and love and hold a Mother Earth, so that we don't have these troubles. So the climate crisis is, to at least we can adapt worst case scenario, but that we can mitigate some of this. And so these are things that are happening in the communities in real time. And so while we're talking to the big corporations and to the governments about that, where is the resources to help these women who are really trying to make, trying to survive, in the middle of displacement? And we saw some of that during COVID, right, where women just had to just change, like completely turn directions from the work that they had been doing in order to address the needs of the community. The nursing crisis here in the U.S. I mean, we could go on about how women continue to show up, but what we need to do, and this is what Global Fund for Women is trying to say every day, is, please help resource these women. Stop thinking that they can just do this
Mm-hmm.
on their own with their own pocket, their own dime, without any help. You're going to burn them out. We're not going to have them. And that helps no one. Let's resource this work, so that it's not just seen as something that they should be doing, but it's something that we all need. It's an investment. I mean, talking about investments, right? It's an investment in all of our future. It's not just charity. It is, let's get these women what they need so they can do this work for all of us.
That's right. And it's crazy because, listen, we only got like 5 minutes left, and I got so much to say about that. But I was saying, I would say that, oh my goodness, because like you're hitting on so much that's like near and dear to my heart. There's the like indirect effect that we're not talking about yet. Like you said, we talk about carbon emissions,
Mm,
and like that is, we're keeping people hung up there, right? Because
yep.
there's these other effects that are happening on women, and I think it just speaks to the value of women. It speaks to like men's participation in women's issues. It speaks to there's so much there around like how things can be better. Like recently, I testified in front of Congress about the accredited investor definition,
Mm,
and while this will, if we could lower the accredited investor definition, it will let more people in.
mm,
Because right now you have to make a certain amount of money or have a certain level of net worth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're not even giving, women in this country where we talk about pay wage disparity, like that pay gap. We're not giving
Yeah.
women an opportunity to invest in women,
Yep.
right? So we're talking about policy making that as a resource. So resourcing is like everybody's thinking, give me your money. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
but give me some policy that allows me to work, right? Allows me to be paid
Absolutely.
fairly, allows me
Yep.
to get into the game, opens the door for me. It's
Yeah.
like resources are not just give me your money and your land.
Right.
We need to be thinking about this all the way around. And so I
Oh
think
my
like
God. Yeah.
I'm preaching to the
Time.
choir, but like
Yeah.
this
I
gets me
mean,
fired up.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Time.
Time.
Uh,
Time is a big one. Yep. So yeah, I mean, we
oh
still
my
got a lot of
goodness.
work to
How do
do.
you give people
That's right. A lot of work to do, but I am with you. Let's figure out how to be in solidarity around these issues and look for again the commonalities in the work that we're doing. We don't all have to 100% agree. I'm glad you're working on economic justice. I'm glad when I see sisters working on different parts of these challenges that we all have is because at the end of the day, I want to be and want to use my platform at Global Fund for Women. I want to be in service to all of you. What can I do to make it easier for you to do this work and still do all the other things that you got to do, like take care of your children, take care of your families, move across the country when you when you're called to do so.
Well, listen, I feel like you're doing plenty, and we're gonna figure out how we can do more together. But
Yeah.
one of the things that you have definitely done is capture the stories of
Yeah.
multiple women across the globe in this book, The Everyday Feminist.
Yeah.
And this is a huge piece of your legacy and us
Thank
being
you.
able to engage. If people can't get to you one on one the way I can, ha
Mm.
ha, y'all can't get to it like me. But um, but no, but really, just the idea that like you taking and packaging what you've seen, what you've learned, and the stories and putting into this book is of the utmost importance because
Thank you.
storytelling is also a
Yeah.
super survival mechanism
Yes.
among
Yes.
communities that we don't talk about as much. So we
Yep.
could be in network and mentored from afar through the
Yeah.
Everyday Feminist as we read it. So I just want
Thank
to thank
you.
you for joining me today.
What a
Everybody make
pleasure.
sure that you go everywhere the books are sold and buy The Everyday Feminist. You have to get it. Read these stories, understand what's happening around the country because it is of the utmost importance. I'm so glad to be talking to you, Latanya Mapp Frett. Now we go together. We're gonna be friends
That's
forever.
right. That's
And
right. Yes.
is there anything else you would like to leave the people before we sign off?
The only thing that I want to say is that I think young people and particularly adolescent girls are like so fierce today. And I think that if if we think about their realities and we lift them up and support their work in real terms. I mean, I'm not talking about inviting them to speak at a conference or to run our social media platforms. I'm talking about really allow them to fly, and think of it as giving them some startup resources and capacity and letting them do what they do. I think that's going to be so important for us as we see, the next generations evolve, because there's a lot of nonsense out there for our young girls, and a lot of hurdles that they have to jump over. And I think if we are very specific about when we think about this idea around solidarity, around feminism, around womanism, that we actually hold these girls and give them what they need to address the issues and concerns of their day. So I just wanted to end with that because I think it's so important when we talk about the everyday feminist, we're talking about women of every age, and it is us being intergenerational and having that solidarity between young women and older women. That circle is what's going to get us to where we want to go. So, but thank you, Ami, for having me on the show. Congratulations on your new upcoming book, and I look forward to talking to you again when we have
Thank
the opportunity.
you. I love that. This is the Omi Show. Y'all better tune in every Sunday. You never know who's gonna come through and what gems are gonna be dropping. Today was phenomenal. Join the Omi Homies community. Text hey to 202-918-4483. That's text hey to 202-918-4483. 3. I will be here every Sunday with amazing people to bring you knowledge and understanding of economic empowerment, lifestyle, and business. I am Omi Bell. You've been listening to The Omi Show. We'll see you next Sunday. This is Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, where talk empowers and becomes action.